worked with brands like Low Lintas, the Times of India Group, Reliance Broadcast Network Limited, which is Big FM. So I was in Hyderabad all this while, and while I was working with Big FM, my role was to lead the group in terms of integrated marketing and sales. So my job was to actually bring all the heavy media spenders onto radio, people who have already spent on other media, who are spending heavily on other media but not on radio. So that was my job. I was tasked with that role, and so I was a group manager for integrated sales for the whole of AP. While I was in this role, I was also invited by my boss from Times of India to, join his venture into events and entertainment space. And thereon, I went on to co-founding this organization with him called Vitamin Entertainment, or Vitamin E, as we call it now. So that was primarily in the event space. And while I was working there, pretty much starting from the logo design to creating the strategy, building the, bringing on clients to our company, and creating concepts. I was like completely into this, the initial phase of the journey, and I suddenly realized that I'm on my way to motherhood. So that's the story of, I think, many women around here, and I obviously had to take a break from my job, because that was also the time when my husband was shifting base from Hyderabad to Bangalore. Right. So that was a time when I took a break. So about 2.5 years or about 3 years of break. And suddenly when I wanted to get back to this business, I realized that, things have changed all around me. Technology had advanced so much that, the traditional media background that I come from had changed to actually a digital platform and the social media marketing and everything, where I was like pretty much new to all of this. Right. So while I was doing that, I had to pretty much start from the beginning. Pretty much from the beginning, literally start from, because luckily, since communication was my forte, so I could actually, start with employee communications and engagement. That's why Musicma gave me a comeback break, and I'm really thankful to Musicma for that. And after that, I started realizing that I have this a unique thing for understanding, what employees are going through, what are their journeys like, what are their drivers, what are the passions, that really keeps them going. So that was something that I actually understood in myself, which I did not know as a marketer earlier. So that helped me to actually experiment and start the entire internal communications department in Musicma. Along with that, I full-fledgedly moved into the marketing team, where my primary focus was on employer branding for Musicma, along with doing the other full stack marketing, pretty much the digital and social media marketing, right? So that's my story of how I started and where, I started from and where I am today, right? Now I'll just jump into the topic of communicating in the post-COVID world. Okay, why I chose this topic is obviously because this is something that I don't think needs any introduction. This is something that we all are grappling with. We are trying to understand whatever plans we had earlier. Everything is now kind of completely changed, and we have to unlearn a lot of new things, and kind of learn and imbibe a lot of things into our strategies. Be it whether in communication or in marketing, or the way you're looking at hiring or firing or whatever it is. Everything has changed today. Everything has changed, and today, so while I'm going to talk about this, let me finish the presentation. If you have questions, please ask me, because this is mostly from my experience of going through this whole phase of communication. Okay, so the first slide was all about my introduction, so I think we didn't miss much. I'll move on to the next one. Yeah. So like I said, I don't think we need to establish the reason why we are talking about the purpose of communication today, and how we should communicate in the post-COVID world. But what I want to bring to your attention is that, we are actually seeing a lot of acceleration in digital transformation across platforms, right? Across different industries. And there is a paradigm shift in the way we communicate. Obviously, I mean, this is, I think, pretty clear to most of the people, wherever, whichever industry you're working in, right? So everything is becoming very, very digital. And the, industries which have been completely traditional, they are also moving into the digital platform. Now, when we are seeing that, there is also a lot of fear, a lot of anticipation what's going to happen and all of that. And because of which, I think this is something that we have not seen in many, many years, and many generations actually before us have also not seen. And I mean, it's all of this catastrophic impact. I think what the pandemic has also done is also it has opened up opportunities for a lot of new ideas to come in the forefront. And it has also kind of accelerated our dreams of the future. Whatever we thought we would do probably 5 years from now, we are actually able to do it today, and probably we are forced to do it today more than anything else, right? So I think a clear fallout of COVID-19 is the fact that we are seeing digital transformation and this paradigm shift. Now, it's brought about a lot of challenges and these, completely unprecedented times that we've not seen. And people are grappling with, I think, survival strategies more than anything else. We're seeing a lot of these, manufacturing units which are locked down. There are a lot of these supply chains which are interrupted, right? A lot of business and services which are disrupted because of COVID-19. I mean, as a fallout of COVID-19, and a lot of a whole chunk of I think employees, this workforce, which are completely looking at an indefinite period of nothingness. I mean, they do not know when the next job opportunity or that big opportunity is going to come to them, right? So that's where we are. And because of which, I think our communication now has to be in tandem with the survival strategy. It cannot be just about hard sales and pushing for all of that, but it's more about being in line with the survival strategy, right? So moving beyond from what we have known so far, as a role of communication, which was of informing, educating, and entertaining, I think right now we are seeing a shift towards, more of empathy, a communication which, shows a sense of camaraderie and something that really inspires hope, right? Because I think this is what primarily people are looking forward to. Now we need, in these kind of times, when we are as social human beings, it is our natural, self behavior that we would want to go out and, communicate with everybody. But I mean, it's been months that we are actually locked up, in our homes, and hence obviously we are hanging out a lot more on the social media platforms, right? So everything, if you see, even our behaviors have changed so much because of this. And more than ever before, I think this is one thing that we are looking at is camaraderie, and hoping that, embracing the new normal. I think we are going to step into a new world of possibilities, right? So when we are in the middle of something like that, I think the primary focus for us as communicators is to make sure that we keep our brands afloat. It is not about like marching ahead. I know there are a lot of companies who are also doing well, especially in the KPO industry and all that, which is obviously, why we are also seeing growth in some pockets. But I think mostly what we need to do is take a step back, understand that right now we have to keep our brands and ourselves afloat. We have to survive, right? It's a survival strategy. And we have to start building this community of staunch believers, who are going to be with us, who would love to be our partners when the time is right. Maybe right now the time is probably not right for them to, really, join hands with us and do a lot of business with us and get volumes for us. But what is important is that they believe in what we believe in today, and also, make sure that they are going to be with us because they are now going to be a part of our community, and start building their brands when they can do it, when the time is right. Right. So right now, I think it's a very, very good time to focus on brand campaigns and selling through the power of the brand's content. Okay, I think that's going to be of paramount importance of what kind of content are you going to bring out for your customers. Now, all of this, when I just say it, it sounds very like an Uber concept, I can talk about it, but this, if you actually have to translate this purpose, into a strategy, then what all do you have to do? This particular slide is all about that. So I felt in my experiential learning through through the COVID times, what I understood is that the only way to do that is to actually observe keenly, and you have to learn from your experiences and the experiences of the communities that you are relying on, and then you have to share it back with the community, because right now it's a time of collaboration. So the more you gain your experience and your knowledge and you're sharing it with somebody else, they are going to share it back with you. And with this kind of a shared community, shared network, I think we are all going to be doing better for ourselves. So it's not about keeping information to ourselves, but I think going out there, out collaborating and doing things together as communities. Actually, if you would notice, there are a lot of these brands who have joined hands to come together to build a brand together, right? For example, there are some companies, some FMCG companies who have actually tied up with Uber and Ola to deliver their products faster, to their consumers. So this kind of a collaboration is really going to help, and this is also something where we need to understand that the more we learn and share, the more we're going to get back from the community. So that brings me back. That brings me to the next point, which is about how do we focus our communication around the things that people are talking about and what other organizations are doing. And what I have largely observed is that everybody is talking about an enhanced, customer centricity. They're all talking about customers first and all of that, right? But even while they're doing that and they're trying to create sophisticated value-added services for their customers, because what they were selling, a plain vanilla thing may not work today. So they have to layer it with some value-added services today. And while they're doing it, they're still keeping the employee-first approach. Many organizations is what I've noticed through all the kind of mails that I see on social media, messages, and the communication that I see around, right? So these three things are going to be important, and I think that has to be baked into our communication as well, which is about enhanced customer centricity, sophisticated value-added services, and employee-first approach. Now, while we talk about this, three tenets of communication that I felt are going to be very, very important, which is about being credible, being relevant, and being empathetic. Okay. So now being credible will mean that, when we communicate, when we talk about anything, first and foremost, we have to look at credible sources. We have to look at credible references from where we pick our data. For example, if you're talking about, anything to do about COVID-19, probably refer to the World Health Organization or the CDC, right? Don't just go to any random site and pick up things from there. Yeah. And another important aspect of being credible is also about being authentic. So being authentic means that you have to be yourself. Okay, don't try to be somebody else that you're not, just because somebody else is saying that, or maybe just because your competitors are saying that. We believe in, just for an example, we believe in work-life balance, because our employees are going through a lot. They're going through this work the first time they're working from home and everything they're trying to manage. So we believe in work-life balance, and hence you can do this. I think as an organization, if you really don't believe in that, if that is not what you stand for, you should not talk about it, because people are very watchful. The media is watchful. People are all the more watchful, and they're not going to spare you, because they are going to figure out, they're smart, right? They're going to figure out that you are saying something which is not authentic. So I think it's better that if you have something else, I mean, you focus on a different value that you can actually bring upfront, which is, for example, you might be a great company where you give a lot of learning opportunity to people, a lot of growth to people. And that's a brilliant thing to talk about right now, because you're saying that how, as a learning organization, you are actually enabling your people to, wade through this kind of a time of uncertainty, or maybe to be a little bit, future ready. So focus on that kind of communication. You don't just have to pick and talk about anything that everybody else is talking about, right? So I would say be yourself, be authentic. And if you don't, then the danger that's lurking is that media is going to write about you, people are going to report about you, especially with the social community being so much on the rise. I mean, everybody is on social media out there right now. So I think it's important that you focus on bringing out the values that you stand for. And it's a great time, by the way. to talk about the values that your company stands for. So that's about being a credible brand, and that's how you can actually build a lot of credibility, right? Now, being relevant, in my view, would mean that you not just have to bring in things that your customers want. Obviously, that is something that you need to do, but again, you have to go back and you have to really, really have a good understanding of your customers' needs and wants. And when I say customer, let me tell you that what I've learned through my experience is that many organizations are also talking about it, that your employees are also your customers, right? I mean, customers who actually pay with time, and there are customers who are paying with your money, with their money, right? So for both your customers, I think what you need to do is you have to be relevant. You have to see that what are the things that they need, what are the constraints that they are going through because of this kind of a situation. Right? You have to, don't just push things because you already have it, or you don't just give out the communication because you stockpiled it from the pre-COVID times, and you know that this is my communication calendar, these are the things that I'm going to talk about. I don't think it's a time to really do that right now. What you need to do instead is actually really do a lot of research, do a lot of maybe even research with your employees, research with your do a lot of surveys, and get a lot of feedback from your customers, and understand what are their needs and wants. How is the business impacting their lives, how is the industry reacting, and hence it is how is it impacting their businesses, their lives, and everything else around them. And hence, what are the things that are going to make them successful, what kind of information do they want, uh, and that is what will make your communication really relevant. So you can talk about that. You can also do some research on the in-demand products and services, obviously, but it has to have some relevance with your company, what your organization can offer. So you can build communication around those pieces of products and services that are in demand right now in those particular industries, right? And I think the way to do it is probably through some product demos. You can do some service quality testimonials. You can use cases and POVs, case studies, etc. I mean, there are many ways to do it. I've just listed out a few. Uh, Going to the next point, which is about embedding empathy in your communication. I think everybody's talking about empathy, and I also largely spoke about empathy in the beginning of the presentation. But what I want to touch upon today is that we're all talking about empathy, but do we know how to build empathy? I'm talking about building empathy for customers and people that I don't even know. I mean, how am I going to? I don't even see them face to face. I haven't even interacted with them. So if I have to layer my communication with empathy, how do I do it? Right? But there's a science behind doing empathy, understanding empathy, which is through a tool called Empathy Maps. I think many of you already know about it. But in case you do not know, there's something called Empathy Maps, and you can look up Google. There are many, many formats. But the basic thing about creating an empathy map is, it allows you to understand what is your target audience thinking, what are they seeing, what are they doing, what are they hearing, what are they saying, what are the places they're hanging out in, what are they feeling, what are their pains, what are the gains, what can make them successful. So things like that, right? It helps you put all of that in one place, and that's called the empathy map. And the moment you have that, you'll see that it's so much easier for you to actually go out there and create your communication plan. Because while you're creating the empathy map, you will have a deeper appreciation or a deeper understanding of the problems that they are going through, and hence what is the kind of communication, what kind of solution. You might have a solution to a problem, your organization might give you a solution to a problem, but which aspect of that solution do you want to highlight is something that you will understand, and that's how I think you should build your communication strategy. Moving to the next slide. So we've spoken largely about observing so far, and we've talked about, what all do you need to include in your communication strategy. But obviously a strategy remains a strategy on paper until and unless you actually put it into an actionable plan, right? So the way to do it is to actually orient your communication strategy around your observation. So whatever you've observed so far about your target audience in terms of their online behaviors, how things have changed for them. What are they doing? What are they reacting to? Who are the people they are actually communicating with more? All these kind of behaviors are your insights, which are going to help you in orienting your communication strategy. And once you do that, it's going to be easy for you to create a robust communication calendar, right? But make sure that while you're creating the communication calendar, keep some space for some topical content. Okay. What I mean is that, every day, if you see with the change in numbers of, COVID-19 positive people, in a country, for example, wherever, the status of a country is changing just based on the number of COVID positive, people in that country, right? So when the status is also kind of changing at the drop of a hat, you have to be open to the fact that you will get some new data. Suddenly your plan that you had made yesterday may not work today, right? So things that were, true yesterday are not going to be true anymore today. And because of which, you will have to make sure that your calendar is fluid. Okay. Do not make it so sacrosanct that, hey team, I have created this plan and this is how I exactly thought we will go about it. But you have to make sure that you have kept some space to embed those topical content into your communication calendar. And I think everybody will concur with me if I say that, I think Amul has been doing this brilliantly all through the years. I mean, ever since I've been growing up, I've been seeing Amul come up with this fantastic campaigns, very, very topical and very relevant to people, right? So that creates a lot of stickiness with your brand campaigns. Now, when I talk about, strategy and, I'm talking about all this communication calendar and all of that, it's still going to be incomplete if you do not have your content and execution pieces in place, because your content and execution, go hand in hand along with your strategy to complete this communication puzzle. Right. And if you actually realize, towards the beginning, I had spoken about how content is going to be your brand, or your organization is going to be led by the content strategy, right? So if you see, content is actually taking the center stage, and it's actually becoming the undisputed king when it comes to customer engagement. So while content is the king, I would say strategy is the hand of the king. I just want to pause here for a while, and I want to check, is my PPT still visible?
Yes, very much visible, Sujani. Yeah.
Okay. And if you guys think I need to slow down a little bit, please let me know. I think I'm speaking a little fast.
No, you're doing good. Not a problem.
Okay. So now, I mean, so much talk about content being the king and all that. Now, so obviously I wanted to focus a little bit on how do you build your content plan, what all you should include in that, right? The first and foremost is the source of content. Now, this is, there's a mistake that actually I did when I started off in my career about, say, 5-6 years back, when I got back. What I did was as a communication and a marketing and communication specialist, I thought that my role is going to be the person who's going to create all the content, and I'm going to beautify the content, create the content, and present it out there, right? But I think I was really, really wrong in that, and I've learned over the years that you as a marketer or a communicator, you don't have to take the entire burden of creating content. You have to look for sources of good sources of content. I'm sure most of the professionals here know about it, but I was also told by the Shenzhen team that there are a couple of, not couple, I think there are a few students who have also registered today. So I think for your understanding also, I want to bring this up, that if you are creating content, make sure that you are also visiting certain sources of content. You have to rely on some other sources of content also apart from yourself, because you cannot be creating content for everything, right? So right now, I think the focus has to be on your technology teams, on your R&D teams, because a lot of probably innovation is happening, a lot of research is happening on what next can be brought out, which is going to ease the pain of your customers. So I think these are the primary two, functions which can actually add a lot of value in, giving out the content and helping you creating the content. So definitely turn to your tech and your R&D teams. I've also brought out the fact about a little bit about the wellness teams. If you do have, like Musigma actually had a wellness, team in the office. So if you guys actually have in your organizations, if you have wellness teams, I would say that that is also a good source of content. I mean, don't just side it because you think that's not our line of business and all of that, because again, going back to the point of empathy, people are talking a lot about mental health, and if you have something like this, if you actually have a wellness club or you have a fitness center or whatever in your organization, do go to them also for source of content, because they are going to give you content which is going to be appreciated by your employees, and you can even take it outside on the social media for the larger community, and that will, I think, create a lot of stickiness for your communication as well. So you can look for a lot of these tips which can be given out. And for your tech and R&D kind of content, obviously we are looking at a much deeper, in-depth kind of content, probably in the form of a white paper or a point of view or something like that, or a case study, something like that, right? So these are two different aspects of sources where you can go to, but again, these two, all of these are actually very important. Now, as a source of content, don't just restrict yourself only to the functions that I've spoken about, but definitely turn to your employees and your customers, because they have a first-hand experience of going through your organization, through your brand's services, and they would know best, what you stand for, and what are the kind of how you can actually help them in their transformation journeys, right? So I think it's a good time to really go back to your customers and employees, and also your followers, to find out what are they talking about, what are their recommendations, if they have any feedback, or they can write testimonials for you. I mean, it's great. You should actually bank on that, because just to cite an example, I think 52% of FMCG customers, or the CPG customers, actually 52% of them actually have been referring to these recommendations for their product discoveries, and before they actually buy any kind of product. So they're looking at these kind of testimonials and recommendations. So please make sure that you have them as a part of your communication plan. That brings me to the next point, which is about the flow of communication. Now, in your flow, there is something that I always follow, and I've tried to follow this in this particular presentation as well, which is the why, how, and what format. I think it's always important that you structure your communication in this way. I mean, there are many formats available. I will not want you to kind of just go by this, but I think this is something which is pretty much like your first principles thinking. How it helps is that when you start with the why, you actually appeal to that part of the brain which is actually which helps in decision making and in behaviors and all of that, right? So if that is the case, if you can actually appeal to by saying the why, you're actually calling out the purpose of why you're doing what you're doing. And the moment you do that, the person's decision making becomes easier. And obviously with the support of data, which is the what and the how and what you do things, the decision making is going to be easy for your target audience. So I think always in my mind, I always like starting with the why, and then I go to the how and the what flow. And when I say how and what flow, I start with the why, and I end with the CTA, which is your click to action. What do you actually want your target audience to do? What is the action that you want your target audience to take, right? So that is something that I have followed so far, and I think it will be also helpful for you. You can try this format. The other point is that don't just look at data in terms of just numbers. There are stories which are underlying these numbers and data. Always try to find out what is the story that your numbers are telling you. Okay, and then try and talk about a story. I think in my introduction, Khushbu or Ankita would have probably just mentioned that I said that I believe in the power of stories, and pretty much so, because whatever it is, even if you've actually done a drab job, but the moment you present it like a story, it just sticks in your customer's mind, in your audience's mind, right? You don't forget that. So I think storytelling is a very effective technique. I think you should try that also in your flow. In terms of formats, there are, when I started off, probably 10-15 years back, I would say, I always thought that, content only means text. You have to have a whole blob of words and letters, and that's about it. Your sentences, that is content. But I'm sure you understand by now that content is not just a blob of text, but it is this whole mix of text, audio visual together, and so many. There are different forms, right? I mean, it's any form of art actually which you can present on any medium. That is your content, right? So make sure that in your calendar you have a healthy mix of all these kind of different elements, whether it's text or audio or visual or audio visual together. I mean, have a very, very nice healthy mix. And now with creativity, I mean, with innovation and creativity, I mean, you can just do a whole lot of things, right? But what is important that I'm seeing in the post-COVID world specifically is that the virtual events have really shot up. I mean, this is also an example of what we are doing, right? And I think there's speculation that it's going to stay, even if when everything else is going to open up and live events are going to come back, everything is going to be there. But the value that virtual events are actually bringing to us, I think that's the reason why. I mean, the why is so strong that I think virtual events are going to stay. And hence, I would suggest that you actually weave in a bit of your podcasts and webinars and maybe, live video streams into your communication strategy. Just to give you an example, I think Facebook has seen about, a rise of video content by about 70%. I think Instagram has seen live videos by about an increase in live videos by about 60%. And, WebEx has gone up by, I think 5.5 million minutes of meeting time is what, WebEx has seen in the first 11 days. So that's, I mean, data enough to tell us that, this is something that is picked up big time, and this is going to stay. So I think in your mix of communication, you should also start bringing this in. Okay. In terms of your style of communication, most of communicators would actually, people who are in branding and marketing would already have a style guide, right? Which means that, the tone and the voice with which you communicate. I mean, even if you take off the logo from your communication, it should still seem to be the same brand that you're talking about. You take off the Coca-Cola logo or you take off the Pepsi logo, and you still, through the way you communicate, whatever words you're going to use, the language, the tone, and your voice of communication, you will know that, which brand is talking to us today, right? So that is the style that I'm talking about. That is a style guide. If you do not have it yet, I mean, definitely you have to build that in, create the style guide. But make sure that when you're doing the style guide, post-COVID times, make sure that it has the layer of empathy on it. It has the layer of hope in it, that there is something which is coming up and there is something that you can actually do, from here. You can take forward from here, right? So that has to be weaved into your style guide. So probably now you have to go back and also see, how you can embed this together, right? Now, in terms of length, content also depends a lot on the length. I think a lot of people would already know by now that the length of the content has to be tailored as per the channel that you're using. For example, if you are looking at Twitter, Twitter allows you 280 characters. And by the way, it's double the size that the number of characters that they are allowing this year, vis-a-vis the number of character limits that they had last year, right? So you have to, so it's meant for brevity. I mean, that particular content that you're putting up on Twitter has to be brief, has to be very sharp, pointed, absolutely on the dot, and you're just showcasing your thought leadership through Twitter. So make sure when you're putting your content, you have the medium in mind and your channel in mind, and you're putting out the content accordingly. Now, when you are doing, creating communication, many a times that I have also done that in the past, that if I've created a communication specifically for LinkedIn, I would go ahead and, do a cross promotion across all the channels, whether it's Instagram or Facebook or Twitter or wherever. Obviously, I will play with the length. But very honestly, that doesn't really work too well, because you have to change your content a little bit. You have to tweak it, because the content that you will put up on LinkedIn is not, mostly will not appeal to the people, the consumers on Instagram. So Facebook and Instagram probably will have similar kind of content pieces, and people are expecting to see that, but still the style will be very different, right? So you have to customize, you have to tailor your content as per the channel that you're putting up on. LinkedIn will be pretty much more professional, whereas uh, your even though a lot of brands are actually selling through Instagram and Facebook, but what you have to do there is very different. The strategy is different. You have to put you have to be more visual there. You have to put out a lot more videos, appealing, good looking stuff there, whereas on Instagram, probably you have to talk about the benefits a little more, the product benefits, and a little bit about the seriousness of the product, right? So that is how I would say that you should tailor your content in terms of the length. Now, what I've also seen, taking more and more precedence is something that I called snackable content. So obviously with us, all of us working from home and managing home and work front and everything, we are always on the go, and I think our attention span is now probably less than a goldfish, right? So we need content which is snackable, which is kind of, we can just quickly see and kind of glance through and understand what are we trying to communicate through that. So it has to be tasty, basically. It has to be very aesthetic, it has to be catchy, very short, and that's the reason why you call it the snackable content, because people want to come back to it time and again. They just want to have more and more of it. So that is snackable content. And even for the long form of contents that you have, which is your your case studies and your white papers and all of that, I would say that try and use a little bit of trailers, some hooks, or something like lead magnets, which you can actually use for doing your lead generation. Right. So I think to get your people hooked onto the larger pieces of content, I think lead magnets and hooks are really going to be important now, right? The other kind of thing that I'm also seeing is specific to the time, which is the 4 p.m. content. And I think, again, this platform is an example of what we are trying to see, because all the webinars that I see are around the 4 p.m., start from 4 p.m. Because if you actually think about it, all the water cooler conversations have gone down, right? All the chai pe charcha, all that used to happen, that is not there anymore. And I think people are much more receptive to using this time, their chai time, their coffee time, hanging out, socializing with people, probably a little bit on the long form contents, like, all these webinars, podcasts, and all of that, live videos. I think this is also pretty much, on the rise, this 4 p.m. content. So probably you should also look at that. Though I would say that every channel actually has their own idiosyncrasies, and what time slots really work best for them, what are their prime times. But 4 p.m. is something that I'm seeing more and more as a fad that's growing. Okay, so I'll go to the next piece of my presentation, which is about execution. And I think that, a lot of people always say that, oh, strategy is important and execution anybody can do. Well, really not that, because I've done execution, I've done strategy, and what I've realized is that execution is really, really very difficult, and you have to be very disciplined when you're doing your execution. You have to be on the mark to really give shape to your strategy, right? So you cannot demean the importance of execution. So when you do execution, things that you have to keep in mind is obviously the channel, how you tailor your content around the channel. And to do that, what I understood is that right now, because markets are opening up in pockets, okay, what I'm seeing is that there's a lot of micro segmentation that is possible with the customers, with your employees and customers and all of that, right? Because there are a lot of hyper local solutions and services out there. So when you are building your communication and the channel, whatever you want to choose to communicate, just make sure that you are weaving in, you are actually targeting your customers to as much, fragmentation you can actually do, as much of segmentation you can do, and go to that micro level as much as possible, because things are not same everywhere. I mean, you can't take a major chunk of people and say that, hey, this is my geography and this is how I'm going to deliver my services here, because within that geography now there are micro segments. So you have to now cater to that particular specific way of communicating, to talk about your hyperlocal solutions. And the other thing that I'm seeing on the rise is also possibly because of this, is that the translation services are pretty much on the rise, right? Which means that in your communication, you also have to weave in a lot of vernacular communication. Um, and by the way, and why I'm also saying this is that because there is a smart, this whole rise of smart phone users, a lot of smart shoppers, which are out there buying from social media, but these people are still constrained by, getting stuck to their regional languages. So if you really want them on board, or you want to serve your customers, because they are your customers, probably for most of the B2B organizations, they are your customers, right? So if you want to really help your customers and really do something for them, you probably should be looking at also starting, embedding a bit of vernacular language in your communication. So now that also takes me to the next point, which is about consistency. Again, like this platform, if you started something and if you've seen that there is a target audience there, there are regular people who are coming back to your channel, make sure that you maintain the consistency. I mean, don't just drop the ball. If you've done something for 2 weeks or 3 weeks at a stretch and you found a unique, pool of people coming to your platform, I think if you don't do it in the 4th week, I think people will start questioning your credibility of or your competency of being able to, sustain this. So, consistency goes hand in hand with also sustainability. So make sure that your plan is consistent. The next point that I want to talk about is collaboration. Now, you have to collaborate with not just your internal teams and your employees and customers that I've already spoken about, because they are going to be giving you some very, very useful content, based on which you're going to attract more and more customers, right? Which are going to be helpful for your customers. But I think what is also about collaboration is the collaboration with community and building community. So right now, if you see, brand advocacy is pretty much at its peak, because like I said, people are actually looking at, a lot of testimonials from other people. They're trying to see a lot of word of mouth digitally before they actually make a buying decision. Okay, so then you have to focus a lot on creating a strategic specifically for community marketing, if I may say so. Right? So how do you actually? I actually have put it in in my words. I have I put it in 3 R's, in the form of 3 R's, which is recruit, reward, and recognize people on your community. When I say recruit, I'm not saying paying and recruiting them. What I mean is that how do you attract? How do you identify the right people? How do you attract them? And then how do you get them to start building your community? Through word of mouth, right? And a good way to keep, recognize them and reward them is to probably just mentioning about them, figure out who are the most active users on your, the most active people, hanging out on your community. If they're talking about good stuff about your brand or your community and all of that, reward them by probably just doing a simple shout out, popularize them on other platforms, on your social handles and all that. They will feel rewarded, and I think they would like to build your community further, right? So you have to have a plan even for community communication. Now, that pretty much, I think I'm kind of running a little late, but I would try to wrap this up quickly, which brings me to the last point, which is about having feedback loops. This is very, very, very important. And, because this is something that will have to constantly feed back into your strategy, into your content, into your execution, into everything, because you're going to get those signals from the media mentions that are out there. You're going to do the sentiment analysis that are, out on the social media, or from your customers or from employees. So always look out for this feedback. There are a lot of free media mention tools, social listening tools that are out there. So probably you can actually bank on them to get a little perspective, a little insight on what people are talking about your brand. What are they wanting to see? What is probably the lacuna? And probably you can fill it up, once you understand that. And then you can, go back and relook at your communication strategy. So what I want to say, and like why I'm saying this is very important, is because your strategy, I mean, though obviously you'll have a plan, you'll have a strategy, you'll have everything, your content and everything in place, but it has to be again fluid. Okay, don't make it sacrosanct that you cannot go back to it and change, because you have to change, because times are changing very, very rapidly. That has to feed back into your plan to make sure that you are relevant in the market. Okay, so that brings me to the end of the presentation. I think I've probably left out a few parts that I wanted to talk about because of paucity of time. So I'll just leave the floor open for any kind of questions or examples or anything that you want me to talk about or you want to share.
Thank you, Shinjini. Thank you for such an informative piece of content here. As Shinjini mentioned, people, the questions, whatever you must be having, you can just use the chat box and start typing out your questions. So Shinjini, while people typing, I had one question which I wanted to ask you about. This entire thing of influencer marketing, which is, it came like a wave, and now there are like influencer agencies, and a lot of people are using and trying to put in influencers in a very different, innovative way. But where do you think this trend is going? Like, is it going to be continuing in the post-COVID world? And how are marketers are thinking of making use of influencing marketing in the right way?
Sure. See, influencer marketing, I think it is going to go on for a while. Right now, I think it's a time where people are using a lot of influencer marketing, and because that also helps in helping you creating a lot of backlinks for your for your website and stuff, right? Because people are going to write about it, they're going to talk about you, and obviously they're going to mention you. So the more and more these guys do it, they're influencers, so people are going to look back and see what is there in your organization or your brand has to offer. So that is going to stay. Right now, definitely it is very, very relevant, because like I said, people are referring to a lot of these recommendations. But let me tell you something that as the shoppers are going to be they're going to get smarter by the day, right? And I think beyond the point, I actually don't see influencer marketing working the same way as that is working right now, because people are going to make out that it is pretty much like an advertorial or an ad and not an editorial. You understand what I'm saying? So there is a difference when you place an ad and or write an advertorial which is about your company, your organization, or whatever, about your brand, but you've paid the newspaper to actually write about you, right? Versus having an editorial which is purely being covered by the media because of what you're doing. So it initially even the advertorials had a huge pull, but gradually I think that has dropped. So I think even influencer marketing for some time, probably in the next 5 years also, it's going to be like a wave, it's going to be there. But if you ask me, seeing marketing for such a long time and coming from the traditional media to the digital media and also adapting and learning the new modes of communicating, I think it's going to probably dip at some point of time.
Right. We have another question. Can I just read it out to you? Is it okay?
Sure.
Yeah. What's your take on experiential marketing in the post-COVID world? How will it evolve, and how can an organization leverage it to their advantage?
Can I have a little more clarity on that question?
Yes.
Because experiential marketing would mean what? I mean, it means different things to different people.
Correct.
Yeah.
So Aditya, if you're talking about experiential in terms of on ground marketing activities or anything like that, if you can just specify, then that question becomes.
Okay, so if you're talking about giving an experience of your brand before, I think probably that's what she means, that, giving an experience of your brand, or sampling your brand before somebody buys it, whether it's a brand or an organization where you're joining as an employee or whatever, you're buying as a customer. I think that is going to actually be more and more important in the coming days. So what you can do is that, while you don't have to talk about all the secrets that you're putting in there, because actually there are no more secrets. I mean, your technology is going to aid you in certain things, but what really is important is that the way you are going to do it is going to be important, because maybe the same technology you're going to use what your competitors are going to use, but as an ecosystem, what you're providing, what you'll be able to provide through the kind of people who work for you, through the processes and the platforms or the culture that you have, is going to be the differentiator. And I think if you can give a piece, a slice of that experience to your customers and your whoever, potential employees or whoever, I think yes, that is going to be more and more important, because now people want to sample, they want to taste it before they want to spend a lot of money. So maybe you can also marketers probably could also look at ways where they can actually make prototyping easy for customers, where they can spend very little money, do a little bit of prototype, get the taste out of it, see how it's actually adding value to their service, and then probably they can move on to a full-fledged deal with you. Does that answer?
Right. The next question is from Shraddha. She's asking, is user-generated content safe to use, or can it hamper with the brand's credibility?
I think user-generated content is very, very authentic in my view, because if they are users, they would have already used the product or the service, and they would know what it is, right? So even if the brand, I mean, if you're talking from the organization's point of view, the organizations have to be, have to know that this is something which is going to come up. People, users are going to talk about your brands. Now it is how you actually induct your users to understand your brand. Are you able to give that value proposition? Are you able to help them integrate with you, to understand, to immerse in your brand value proposition, and then then the users will also talk about the same language as you are talking about them. So it is about inducting the users to understand your brand value, your brand propositions, and obviously have a taste of your brand. So what users are going to say. So one is the duty of the organization to make sure they're at a level playing field, they understand your brand value well. And also for the users, if they are credible, and if they are talking pretty much in lines with the organization, there is no issue. But there could also be people who have a foul play in their mind, where they want to just tamper with the brand and talk about it. But that is I think that's a game that we have to always keep playing, and we have to make sure that the brand's communication is so strong that if the user is trying to do a foul play, it doesn't really work out.
Right. Thank you for that, Sanjini. I think we'll take one last question from the people. This entire snackable content idea is, people are actually liking it. So there was a question around, can you explain a bit more about what do you mean by snackable content and this 4 p.m. content? And
oh yeah, sure. By the way, snackable content is something that I picked up from LinkedIn. I had gone for a workshop there, and I saw a lot of people actually doing stuff. And I think when the person was actually putting things together, she mentioned snackable content. It just stayed in my head because pretty much like, why do we go into snacking? What is snacking? It is these short pieces of things which caters to our hunger. It's tasty. It's not that healthy. It's okay, but it's tasty, and it's something that we want to come back to because it's instant. It's got this instant gratification. So when I say snackable content, it's pretty much related to the snack that you will probably have when you're hungry. So say for example at 4 p.m. you actually pick up say a Snickers bar. And you have it, it's got a lot of nuts in it, and it gives you that instant energy. And it also kind of helps you understand what is this whole thing about. So it kind of douses your hunger as well, which means it has enough information to, to satiate your curiosity of what you're looking at. It does not have a whole lot of things. I mean, obviously you have to refer to something else to dig deeper into that content, but this is enough to create that hook and to make you come back to it. So it's a short piece of content. It's visually appealing. It's attractive. It's something that you can just read on the go, and something that will just keep, the taste of it will keep lingering in your head for a long time. So that is snackable content.
Right. Uh, so with that, I think we have come towards the end of the webinar. Shinjan, I want to thank you so much for taking out time and, putting some things in perspective, because a lot of us are kind of doing communication for the brands on a day-to-day basis. And these pieces of information just kind of highlights the important things and make us go from that to the next level. So thank you so much for that. Audience, thank you so much for attending today's session. As I mentioned earlier, the webinar series is ongoing, and the coming week also we have a couple of interesting webinars. So please go and check out our social media pages, and in case you're interested in anything, you can register and attend those webinars. Having said that, thank you so much. Shinjini, any last words before we close the
So
session?
thank you so much, Ankita. And I would definitely want to thank Shenzhen, because a lot of whatever I have said, I have seen this platform actually doing that. When I talked about empathy, I've seen Shenzhen actually doing that, and embedding empathy in what they believe as an organization. They're upskilling people, and my heart really goes out to people who have lost so many jobs. I mean, lost their jobs. So many people posting every day, and they are actually grappling not just to with the economic condition, but also questioning their own credibility, that why me, why was I chucked out, or why did I lose my job, and I just feel so horrible about it, but it just feels so nice. And probably that's the reason why I also kind of jumped at this opportunity of speaking here, because I think Shenzhen is just doing that. You're trying to bring people together, creating opportunities for them. You're also trying to upskill people through these webinars. So I think it's been a pleasure working with this team, and thank you, Murli, and the team for giving me this opportunity. And thank you, wonderful audience, and for your questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shinjin. Thank you. Thank you all. Have a very good evening. Bye.